good morning everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to make another Christmas cookie I call raspberry slices. Now this is really nice. It comes out quite well. I had to practice a few times. I didn't mind at all. Now the finished texture is kind of like a shortbread, but it has this really weird thing that it sort of tastes like raspberry Pop-Tarts, even though it's like a cookie. You have to make them to see what I mean. But it's worth the effort. So, first thing to do is get your butter softened. Now, to speed things up a bit, what I did is I chopped it into little chunks, and because what you do is you want it nice and soft, but you don't want it melted and greasy. So I'm going to get that going in here. And while you're getting this done, preheat your oven to 375 Fahrenheit. Now you dump all the butter in all at one shot. And get that going on one setting above low. You can edge it up when it starts to soften. That gets the big chunk out of the middle of the beater too. That's looking kind of creamy. Get your sugar, and you can toss all that in at once. The icing sugar is for the frosting at the end. Now this, not too high at first, or else it's going to fly out of the mixer. Okay, so carefully scrape that down. What you really want to do is you just want to make sure that there's nothing really chunky at the bottom. I don't really go to work on this because all the eggs in. Now crack an egg in a bowl to make sure you don't get any eggshell. Put that in. Mix that on low. In the meantime, get your vanilla and almond extract in there. Now I'm definitely going to scrape it down. Now I find if there's a lot stuck in the beater, it's a lot easier to kind of get the big parts out while it's still down. Whereas if you lift it up too high, it can come out the side all over the counter. And you really don't want to do that. Just mix that up briefly. It's kind of liquidy in the bottom, which is good. And I got that all mixed up even. Now I'll let that go for a bit and get my dry stuff going. I've got my flour pre-measured. And just add the baking powder. Now you can just mix this in by hand. Okay, once that's in, go back to your mixer, and now you can turn it up. And you actually want this till it's looking even and, you know, a little clumpy, but you don't want it melted. So now put this in thirds. There's no exact way to do it. Basically just get, you know, 3-4 big spoons at once should do it. Mix on low. Once it looks like the flour's not going to fly out, turn it up one notch. When it forms a mass like that, put the next addition. Same thing. Okay, when it's picked up everything, put in your last bit. Now there's always going to be a bit stuck to the side at this point, and the mixture is going to be very crumbly. So get your spatula. There's some really soft stuff on the sides, and there's some stuffs, and there's also some in the middle of the beater. So get that back in. Just get that all mixed up. Now at this point you want the dough to be very soft, but you don't want it greasy. if you don't mix it long enough that it forms a mass like this, even though you will get a very short dough, as they say, which has a very nice texture and flavor, the trouble is it will break apart when you try to cut them. So the catch is get it soft enough that it forms a mass, but not so soft that it goes greasy, and then you're done. Sometimes the easiest way is to just get the beater off and bang it off the side of the bowl, or at least this way you can hold it without having the dough go everywhere. You're going to form these directly on the baking sheet, so I'm going to just kind of knead this together. You really want to make sure that it's all staying in one piece and it's all evenly distributed. If you do a mild knead in the bowl, it's not going to toughen it up, and I'll actually just make sure they all stay together. Okay. First couple experiments I actually weighed the dough, but you know what? As long as they all get on the cookie sheet, it's just extra work for nothing. So what I do is kind of form it into a really big capsule shape and just eyeball it and pinch off thirds. They'll look about the same size. The dough is going to be quite soft, which is fine. So what you want to do is you want to press and pull. You can do this freeform in the air, but there's a lot of chance it's going to break. I found I got better results doing it right in the pan. And that way, if one end is too close, you can just work the other side and kind of pull it down. Now, if you can, sort of square it up a little so you can see that it's all even, or even enough. When you slice these, you will not notice any difference at all. So don't stress on this overly, okay? That it's sort of flat and about that thick. And then you're going to take the back of your hand and you're just going to push down. What this is doing is making a channel for the raspberry jam. So those are all ready to go in the oven. So bake it in a preheated 375 oven for 18 minutes on the clock. Now while those are baking, get your jam ready. There's two ways you can do this, okay? If you want, you could just measure out your jam and then you can take little spoons out of the cup and kind of drizzle it along. Personally, sandwich bag, far easier. Because what you're going to do is you're going to put all that in there and then cut a corner off and treat it like a piping bag. And no, do not try a parchment paper piping bag with jam. It will just go everywhere and be a total disaster, alright? I think this is the hardest part of the recipe, is transferring the jam without getting it all over the counter and into the sandwich bag. And yeah, make sure you get the seedless kind, because it's just so much nicer on the cookies. And I should say, I have tried this both ways while I'm doing this. Make sure to pipe the jam right when the cookies come out of the oven, okay? Because that way it sort of melts and goes flat and it gets a little gummy and it sticks to the cookies. So if you do have to stack them after, the jam doesn't come off, whereas if you put the jam on when it's cold, it has a very nice jelly texture, but then you can only do them in a single layers. So just seal that up and I'll just wait till they are out of the oven. Another prep item you can do while you're waiting is get your frosting mix. Now, I've tried this both ways. You get slightly thicker with the coffee cream, plus I ran out of milk, but you can use either milk or coffee cream. Either one is fine. And just 1 tablespoon. Don't put too much, because if you do, it'll get super runny. You'd be surprised how runny this is to start off with. Just do this right in the measuring cup. I know it seems like it's just powder at the beginning, but it does mix up fairly quick. Yeah, that's a nice consistency. I will also be piping this, but I'm going to let it set up in the cup before I transfer it to the bag, because it will thicken up just sitting on the counter some. So these are fresh out of the oven. I got a cooling rack on the counter so they cool down as fast as possible. I got my bag ready. Now cut off a really small tip. I mean, not as small as you. So the icing you're going to do like really tiny. This one you want to do about this much. You want the jam to come out nicely, but you don't want it so big that it just goes everywhere. So just start squeezing. Doesn't have to be perfectly even, because the dough is so hot the jam will melt and spread. And if you miss a spot, if you do one strip on each one, you should have, and don't get too carried away, you should have enough to go back for any bare patches if you have any. Okay, so I'll go back here. That's looking a bit thin there. Oh, missed the end. You get the idea. And that one's looking a bit thin too. There's another one. It's really funny, when I used to watch cooking shows when I was a kid, I used to like go, "You missed a spot," to the TV. I didn't realize then they couldn't hear me, but yeah. But this will spread out quite nicely, so no worries. Okay, that's about all there is. Now I'm just going to let that sit till it's completely cool. That's very important. So you got to remember, for the jam, put it on really hot. For the frosting, put it on really cold. Stirred up the stuff in the cup and spared you the tedious process of transferring it to bag with the spoon. And that you're going to squeeze down in the corner. Yeah, so you're going to do the same thing, except this time you're going to cut off like a really small piece. And I'm going to drizzle it straight up and down, because you're going to cut these at an angle after. And if the cookies, see, it goes really fast, like this comes out really quick. And if the cookies are a little warm, it may run, but that's okay. So yeah, and even though this looks like an uneven disaster right now, once you cut them, believe it or not, you won't see it at all, which is so nice about this recipe and everything. Yeah, it's very forgiving. And then you can say the cookies are very artistic, you know. They're definitely not store-bought. I like to use a cleaver for these, because it's just easier. If you've got any sharp knife, that will do. So I am just going to cut through here in the middle. I'll just pick up one piece. If you try to move it all at once, there's a really good chance it's going to break. So it's not worth it. And just about an inch apart. They may chip slightly, but they will not shatter if you mix the dough enough. Oh, this is no good for nothing. I'll just have to eat it. Quality assurance and all that, eh? I do scrape off the crumbs between batches, because else, if you get a whole bunch of crumbs under the new piece, yeah, they can break a lot easier. If you get the cleaver under them to transfer the plate, it's a lot easier. Now when they're really fresh like this, I would get more than one plate, because until they dry out a bit, if you stack them right away, they are going to stick together. There's the finished raspberry slices. I'm just leaving them, like I said, in an even layer to finish cooling and drying out a bit before I pack them away. And I hope you try these because they come out really nicely and they make a good gift or something for a table for Christmas. And speaking of, Merry Christmas, thanks for watching, and hope to see you again.